Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, all my relations, because you are all my relations. And I want to give you a few short logistics, which is that there are 2 restrooms right outside of that exit door, one on the left and one on the right. The one on the left is accessible, and it also has a changing table if anybody needs that. And I'm really excited that you all came here. I'm just like overwhelmed, in fact, because we're here for some really important reasons. We're here to celebrate and become inspired. And some of the things that we're celebrating today are the 28th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and living in a democracy where we can pass laws such as the Americans with Disabilities Act. Woo! Yeah. And we're here to celebrate our human family, because we are all related and we are all one family. And we celebrate that because of the fact that we need to come together and fight for things like the Disability Act. We need to come together as a democracy and everybody get out and make our voices heard. And we're also here to get inspired. And we're getting inspired by lots of things today, or I sure am, and I'm hoping everybody here will be. And one of the things we're getting inspired by is that we're going to hear from Adi Barkan, who is a disability rights and healthcare advocate hero. And we're going to hear from Senator Bernie Sanders, who is a tireless fighter for healthcare issues and human rights. And we're going to hear from Sarah Lauderville, who is also a tireless fighter for disability rights with the Vermont Disabilities Council. And for Jennifer Flynn Walker from the Center for Popular Democracy, who helps all of our other organizations get together and fight the good fight for our human rights. We're also here to celebrate having an organization like Rights and Democracy. And we have James Haslam, the Executive Director of Rights and Democracy here. And I hope that between all the organizations that have joined together to ask you to come here and learn about how we can make our democracy a true democracy, and how we can fight and stand up for each other and for our frail human condition, whether it's because of disabilities or health or economic marginalization or cultural marginalization. Hopefully we will all be inspired, and we will all want to be a hero, and we will all go out and be heroes. We need heroes in Bennington. So with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and that would be James Haslam. Oh, I'm sorry. It's too hot in here for me. So our next speaker is actually Vicki Lampron, who is an amazing member of our Rights and Democracy team. And she's going to explain to you, she's going to tell you a story about the human condition, and she's going to tell you a story about why she joined Rights and Democracy. Let's give a hand to Vicki Lampron.
I want to thank all of you for coming out today. It's a beautiful summer day, but it's also a great thing to gather together when we're talking about health care. So it's wonderful to see so many here today who are demanding a change to our healthcare system. I hear over and over that Everyone has access to health care. You're fine. We may have access, but how many of us can afford health care? I want to share my story with you and give you a bit of perspective. Our mortgage is $603 a month. That payment includes the mortgage, our property taxes, and homeowners insurance. $603 a month. Paul, my lovely husband, his company pays 50% of the cost for our health insurance. That leaves us to pay $671 a month for the premiums. Our health insurance is more than our mortgage each month. On top of that, there's a $25 or $35 copay for a doctor visit. We have to pay between $10 and $25 for each of our medications. Then we have to meet the yearly deductible of, get ready, $6,000. When we reach the deductible, the insurance company will pay 70% of the medical bill, which still leaves us 30%. For the first time in decades, Paul and I are behind in our mortgage. We had to make the choice between health insurance and paying the mortgage. We chose the health insurance because Paul and I both have pre-existing conditions. It would be nearly impossible to get coverage for these illnesses if we dropped our health insurance for a short time to catch up on our mortgage. Our story is not unique. So many have to make this choice and even more devastating choices. And that's why I'm fighting to get improved Medicare for all. Nearly 2 years ago, I sat in front of my television watching the monkey business going on and watching a man who does not represent me get elected as our president. Late that night, I was in my chair with my knitting in my lap, swearing at the television, loudly. My husband, who was upstairs asleep, came down. He poked his head down and he said, "I have to ask you, do you think that's going to make any difference?" That's when I joined Rights and Democracy. Rights and Democracy is a grassroots organization that fights and advocates for social justice, whether it's improved Medicare for all, a livable wage, family and medical leave, or a progressive and equitable tax system. Rights and Democracy has supported me in finding my voice and recognizing my strengths. Being part of Rights and Democracy has shown me the strength that we, the people, have. It's referred to as people power. I've seen with my own eyes the power that we, the people, have if we choose to let our voices be heard. So now, instead of yelling at the TV, I go to DC to yell or talk to our Congress critters. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be here. My name is James Haslam, and I'm excited to be here. I'm proud to be part of Rights and Democracy and proud to be building this movement with all of you. It is amazing to come out here on a Friday afternoon on this kind of hot day in a place like this that is really warm with this many people and just see this room stuffed. It's thank you so much for all of you who came out today to be part of this movement and to join us in this effort. Please also give a big warm thanks to the St. Peter's Episcopal Church. This is not the first event they've had. They've had dozens and dozens and dozens of movement events. And please also give a warm hand for the rad Bennington crew, for Mary Garish, Vicki Lamprin, Charlie Murphy, Tom Haley, Lynn, the huge crew that has been organizing so hard. Please give it up. And I'm very proud. We have this is actually, Bennington is our strongest place per capita in the state. And we have people here from around the state that have come. The Rights and Democracy team, Kate, Emma, are here. Give it up. So the title of this event is, Organizing for Healthcare Justice and a Stronger Democracy. And essentially, that is what the story of why we started Rights and Democracy, is all about. I think a lot of you know, and many of you were part of, the efforts that happened starting in 2008, and even before that, but getting serious with the Healthcare as a Human Right campaign starting in 2008, and then growing into there and passing the country's first universal healthcare law, a single-payer law that was, beautiful law, very exciting, people inspired all over the country. But because of a number of circumstances, one being the Affordable Care Act and the exchange that we had to implement and the waiting period of 7 years to implementation and some of the mishaps that happened by the contractors, the political careers of some of the people who had championed it, and then basically a major abandonment from the political leadership in the state. All of that ended up in that victory turning into a pretty significant disappointment to people here and to people around the country. And so, those of us who are part of that, and many people here, certainly Mary and Charlie and Tracy Dorman and others, we had to get very serious about what is it going to take to get in that position again, and what lessons do we need to learn from those struggles? So what's it going to actually take to implement a system? Where did we fall short? And one of the places we fall short, is we didn't have the kind of political leaders in office that could actually stand up to all of the pressures that they were up against and implement a system. And we're going to make sure that when we get there again, that we have real champions that are in place to be able to do that. Yes. The other thing that we realized, in essence, we had to be honest with ourselves. We changed what was politically possible. We changed the debate by bringing the stories like Vicky's out from all over the state about what is happening now with the healthcare crisis. But if we're honest with ourselves, we didn't have enough power to win. People think of human rights in different ways. We think of human rights as essentially power struggles. People don't give us the right to health care. They didn't give us the right to vote. They didn't give us, any of the things that we hold dearest. People in previous generations had to work very hard, had to organize against lots of odds, and including people gave up their lives to be able to win many of the rights that we have. And so when we, welcome Adi, when we are actually trying to win these rights, we have to have enough power to demand them and to make them happen. And with something as big as universal health care, taking on a huge industry that is making a lot of money on our health, we're going to have a lot of power. So that's why we are thrilled to have Rights and Democracy as a vehicle that can organize around health care, around economic justice, environmental justice, racial justice, immigrant rights, you name it. These issues are deeply interconnected. And we want to fight for them when people are legislating and making laws that impact our communities. But also in elections, we can develop candidates that can run on these issues, and we can develop a political mandate for justice. And so that's what we're doing. That's why it's so exciting to see such a full room on a Friday afternoon in Bennington, because this movement is growing and it's getting serious. So thank you very much. We have some very important special guests. We'll eventually have our Senator Bernie Sanders here, but we have some great folks from the Center for Popular Democracy Action, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. And one of the reasons why Rights and Democracy, kind of our vision of how we win Rights and Democracy is it has to happen both locally. No one can do this for Bennington other than you all. And, there's only so much that an individual can do. We need to get organized locally, but we need to be part of strategic statewide power building organization so that we can work together across communities. So we are very excited to say that we just got over the mountain from Brattleboro. We had 475 people at a rally just like this a few hours ago. But we also need to be part of a national movement. We need to be able to fight with our counterparts around the country. That's one of the other lessons we learned from the healthcare situation in Vermont. We can't win in a vacuum. We have to be part of a national movement, and so CPD Action is helping us build from the get-go. Some of the original conversations I had about, starting Rights and Democracy were with Adi, talking about what would it take to build in Vermont, thinking about, New Hampshire and beyond, and they helped us in all of those respects. And so that was part of our formative stage. Senator Bernie Sanders obviously had a major impact on thinking about rights and democracy, the way that he has been able to build support across communities, across Vermont. And then, we got started the same time as his presidential election. And when he called for a political revolution, we weren't actually calling it that, but when he described what he meant, it was exactly what we thought needed to happen, that it was about impacting elections, but it was about building a movement and getting organized for the long haul and being able to, hold everyone accountable no matter what. So we're very excited where we're at right now. We're going to hear some incredible stories from this amazing tour Be a Hero is doing. But one thing that is particularly special about having the tour stop in Bennington, we had to, because Rad Bennington and the leaders like Mary and Vicky and TW and Bill and Tom, and, so many people have been part of going down with CPD Action to be part of the resistance after 2016 to stop the attacks on our health care, on the ACA, on Medicaid and Medicare, and this GOP tax scam that they eventually got through. But people in Bennington have been the per capita, the biggest represented community in the country in that struggle. And so we're very excited. So, right now, we have some very special guests I'm going to be able to turn over the mic to before that. I just want to say, when I heard about this Be a Hero tour, as I said, I'd worked with Adi for a long time. It was incredibly inspiring. And when the video came out that many of you saw that Adi did for the Be a Hero tour, I showed my family. And one of the things that is special about this for today is my son Will, who's holding the camera right there, was inspired to come because he saw Adi's story. And, as many parents know, it's not easy to get your kids to do much of anything, let alone come on an all-day tour, three stops. And it's just an example to me of the kind of inspiration that Adi and everyone involved in the Be a Hero tour is giving to our country right now, asking people to be heroes and stepping up in different ways. So I am super excited to be able to introduce three incredible leaders from our national movement and from CPD Action, Jennifer Flynn Walker, Anna Maria Archilla, and Adi Barkin.
I don't know about you guys, but I could really use a hero right now. I've been an organizer for over 25 years. I know I look much younger, right? Thanks. Thank you. The check, we'll work it out later. And I always thought, even though I had been involved in complex political struggles, I always thought that there was someone out there who was kind of like really, really, really smart, And if I ever got us into a big mess, or if we ever got ourselves into a big mess, somebody would come and save me. Maybe a labor leader, or a brilliant lawyer, or somebody who's been organizing for decades and decades, or maybe a celebrity. I don't know, just somebody to swoop in and swing down and kind of fix everything. Well, things kind of got a little bit out of hand these days, right? We could use someone to swoop in and save us. And I finally got to the point in my career where I was actually talking to like all the people, the heads of the labor unions and the legal, the brightest legal minds. And every single one of them, after the election of Trump, had no idea what to do. They had no idea what to do. There was nobody who was gonna come and save us. And I was terrified, actually terrified. And how many of you guys are terrified about what's happening right now? And I would walk around and I'd actually shake, like just kind of be shaking in the days after the election. And then of course, Trump came after healthcare. And we didn't know what to do, but we just figured, well, we better get to work and do something. And then we remembered, someone reminded me the definition of a hero, because I was saying, God, there's really nobody who's gonna come. Nobody knows what to do? I work for a legend in community organizing. It's one of the reasons why I work at CPD. In addition to working for Anna Maria, I work for this guy, Steve Kest, who was, an early organizer, and he doesn't know what to do. And I kept asking him over and over again, what, are you just holding out on me? Or are you just not telling, there's a lesson I have to learn on my own? And he was like, nope, I don't know what to do. And then I remembered that the definition of a hero is actually people who have the courage to show up even when they're scared. Being scared is a big part of it. And showing up is all of it. Showing up is all of it. That's all we have to do to be a hero, is we just have to come to the event, sign up, answer the phone, show up at the action, and do it over again. Showing up is all of it. And the amazing thing is, then I met, and actually I should modify this a little bit, because the one person that I talked to who kind of had a plan, at CPD we were like, well, I guess we'll just start bringing people to DC, and things are looking bad. So we've lobbied, we've written letters. There was 100,000 people showed up at town halls in that first congressional recess, demanding that Congress does not take away our health care. And yet we were still losing. And the one person that I talked to, everyone was like, it's over, let's just go back to our states and our cities and try to build a wall around us and try to be as safe as possible in our homes, because the rest of the country, it's just messed. There's nothing we can do about that. But the one person who jumped right in and was like, I don't know, I think we could win this, was actually James Haslam. So James Haslam might be the person who actually has the plan. Yep. So then, yes. So then we started bringing people to DC. And, we called people who were within a couple hours of DC, 2-3 hours, 4 hours of DC. And James was like, oh, the whole Bennington chapter is coming to DC. We're driving, I don't know, it's like 12 hours down or something. And, they would come. And you guys showed up. You heroically showed up. And then that was one time, and I thought, oh, that's, they did their part. They're so great, rad. And then, the next week, another van load of rad members would show up, mostly from the Bennington chapter. And then they came week after week after week, a total of 8 times to save the Affordable Care Act, and a couple times for immigration. And so I think now they've been 12 times. Todd was telling me, T.W. Collins, who's an amazing photographer who's photographed these actions, has told me that he's got 10, kind of Flickr file photos of our action. So 10 times the Bennington RAD chapter and the other RAD members have shown up to DC. And the amazing thing is, we won. We actually saved the Affordable Care Act. Nobody thought that we could do this, and you guys did this. And I was going to come here and I was going to say, sincerely, a thank you to Rights and Democracy for, at the time I was on Obamacare, I was going to thank you for saving the health care for myself, for my sister who has Down syndrome, for my mother who's in her 80s. But actually, really, to be more precise, I should be thanking the RAD Bennington chapter for saving the health care for 33 million people in this country. And that's not really an understatement. You own this victory. You really own this victory. You did more than other people. But I'm also here, you may have seen me like texting and stuff at the beginning. I know that's incredibly rude. But I just found out that the hearings have been set for Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court for September 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. That's the first day back for all of Congress from recess. That's incredibly fast, and that is not a good sign, because that means that they know that they will be able to pass this. Now, whatever you think about Brett Kavanaugh, he drives a carpool, he coaches his kids' basketball teams. It looks like such a sweet guy. There's pictures of him with his family. There's one thing that we absolutely know about how he'll vote. We know that he passed Trump's litmus test. He will support any effort to overturn Roe versus Wade. And 2, he believes that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. He believes that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. And if he believes that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional, he certainly believes that Medicare for All is unconstitutional. So, I'm asking all of you to join with all the people who went on the tour with Adi, and they asked them to be a hero and to sign up. I ask you to sign up and join this League of Heroes and be a hero again. I'm sorry, Bennington, you have so much work to do. To be a hero again, and please save the Affordable Care Act and do everything that we can to stop this nomination. So I appreciate you guys coming here today. We are so grateful. RAD is one of the most impressive organizations ever, and I'm honored to know so many of you in the room. But I am gonna lean on you guys again. So, and I know that Mary will be calling each of you to do everything that you can to join the League of Heroes, to be a hero, and to save healthcare once again for the rest of the country. And I'll turn it over,
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Our next speaker, we wanted to bring up CPD and Rights and Democracy have been joined nationally, by the disability rights movement. And Vermont is very lucky to have a leader that is part of building a powerful disability justice movement in Vermont, and is also a national leader in the fight for disability rights. So please give a warm welcome to Sarah Launderville.
Hello. Thank you, James. So this year marks the 28th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and today there are a bunch of people out celebrating that, and then they came back over here to join us, so I appreciate that you all took the time. Each year we take the time and celebrate that landmark legislation. We celebrate the law that gave us the promise of inclusion, access to life, and our civil rights. As we look around the community today, we can literally see how the law impacted our world. Better access to employment, shopping, transportation, housing, and recreation. On this anniversary, I reflect personally on my journey and why it's important to me. And I hope that everyone takes a moment to do the same, and not only reflect, but share your story. When I joined the movement, I was still embarrassed to talk about my psychiatric disability. The fact that I was on disability benefits, kicked out of college because of my diagnosis, fired from my job as a teacher because of my diagnosis, and then locked up in hospital and forced drugged. Over time, I started to share those experiences and found hope and comfort with my peers in disability rights. And I am so proud to be part of an independent living movement which accepts me and others for who we are and embraces our differences. We use these experiences and join in solidarity together with all of our allies to continue to push for the promise of the ADA. But the law itself can only do so much. We all know that society still has biases and still discriminates against people with disabilities. In the 21 years I have been part of the independent living movement, I've seen our celebrations of hope turn to fighting back to protect our civil rights. Over the past year, the lives of people with disabilities have been on the line more than ever, and we've done some serious work to fight back. Some of this work is legislative, fighting back against the awful health care proposals that seek to eliminate those of us with disabilities from the picture. To uphold the integration mandate of the ADA, we must pass the Disability Integration Act. The Disability Integration Act helps fulfill the promise of true integration and finally addresses the institutional bias for ensuring that people who depend on long-term supports and services have what they need to live out of a nursing home or other institution and instead in their own home, surrounded by people they choose and doing the activities they want. We must fight. Thank you. We must continue to fight against the ADA Education and Reform Act. Don't let the title of that fool you, which will help strip back the rights of people with disabilities to file a complaint of discrimination against a business. The business community is fighting hard to ensure this change. We must fight harder. This change can open up the door for other civil rights laws to be challenged. It moved further along this year than ever before and only stopped, thankfully, in the Senate. But that is too risky. We must fight harder. Yes. Yes. This is the time to fight back and join the disability rights activists from around the country. It can be done within the political structure or within our local social structure. We still hear the discrimination. When we still see stairs on buildings instead of zero-step entrances, and at limits is the place that we can go, right? Yes. When employers don't hire someone because of a disability or because they don't understand how to accommodate someone. When we seek financial support in a systematic way that makes us feel worthless and powerless. When a person with a disability is sexually assaulted and the examination room is still not accessible. When a deaf woman at a local hospital goes through childbirth without an American Sign Language interpreter. When people with psychiatric and developmental disabilities are used as pawns in the fight against gun violence, even though studies shows that those with psych and developmental disabilities are more likely to have violence perpetrated on us. And when parental rights are stripped away from parents with disabilities simply because they have a disability, which is still legal in most states. And when the social narrative is ableist and assumes that having a disability is a life not worth living. When we see the inspiration porn on Facebook every day with catchphrases that make non-disabled people feel better about themselves and pity people with disabilities. We are disabled and proud. That pride is embedded in the ADA. It is embedded in the intent of the ADA. That no longer will people with disabilities be hid away, but instead out and living. This is the promise of the ADA, and this is what we are fighting for. I choose to continue to celebrate this legislation that has hope, inclusion, and equity all baked in and change the paradigm globally for individuals with disabilities. And in that celebration, we reflect. We tell the stories of the past and strengthen our bond with one another. We find allies in this movement. We forge new relationships and we recommit to one another. Thank you for your leadership as we work to stop and end discrimination of all people with disabilities, stopping the cultural bias that infantilizes those with disabilities, and creating a world of true equity and true promise. Justin Dart was a leader in ensuring that the ADA was passed, and he always reminded us that we are all leaders and to lead on. We all must lead in order for this world to change. Thank you for all your support, and I look forward to working with you as we all continue to lead on.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next speaker is the co-executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy and Center for Popular Democracy Action, a tremendous leader who's been helping build this movement around the country, Anna Maria Archila. Thank you so much.
Wow. Sarah, my heart is beating fast after your speech. Thank you so much. It resonates so much with me to imagine a world where we don't have to make excuses for our existence, where we don't have to make arguments for our freedom, where it is a given that we all deserve to live a life that is fundamentally valued by ourselves and the rest of the world. Yeah. Thank you. It's so powerful, so powerful. My name is Ana Maria Archila. I'm the co-executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy Action. And I came here to say thank you. Really, the people of Bennington have just led the fight that created political space for the resistance again and again and again and again. And with that, you saved our healthcare. And not only did you save our healthcare, you also made sure that Congress and Trump was really, for the most part, unable to carry out the agenda of handing our country to the 1%, of really instituting a regime of hate. And so I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you to the leaders that have done that. Vicky, thank you for grounding us with your story. We have been together in DC many times, just a week ago, with Addie and others. And it is really in the telling of our stories that we allow people to see themselves in us. And when we do that, we begin to tear away at the things, at the essence of the politics of division and hate and fear. It's when we show up to these places, when we tell our stories, that we begin to create a new world. And we make that world, which is not only possible, but totally necessary, something that we give birth to. So the Center for Popular Democracy Action is a network of community organizations, very much like Rights and Democracy. Organizations of people who have decided that they are going to band together to imagine new solutions, not just to the most immediate problems that we have now, the most personal, individual problems that we experience, but to understand the context of those problems, the fact that they are part of kind of a collective reality, and to imagine solutions that are immediate and solutions that are long-term, bold, and visionary. Rights and Democracy has done something that is really tremendous, which is to say, from the experience of fighting for single payer here in Vermont, we not only understand the challenges of really winning that fight seriously, but we are going to create a path with our activism, with our action, that makes it possible to imagine a really true solution to our healthcare crisis in this country that is national, that is visionary, that transforms the relationship that we have with each other and with our government. So Medicare for All is precisely that. It's a way of thinking about a different social contract, a different way of living in a country together. It's establishing as the norm that we will take care of each other, that we will provide for each other in the moments of need, and that we will do that not when the crisis shows up, but as a daily act, with our contributions and with a commitment to each other. The organizations that are part of CPD are organizations that work on racial justice, on economic justice, immigrant rights, sometimes we describe our work as kind of a laundry list of things. We're fighting for, good wages and paid sick days, and to end the criminal justice system that is locking so many of us, and to pass good immigration laws. But really, those are just expressions of something that we are fundamentally fighting for, which is our right to our freedom. We ground our work in the vision of freedom. We deserve, all of us, the ability to have all the basic things so that we can live free. And we talk in this moment in time, right? In this country, the idea of freedom has been a very central, seminal idea. We have talked in history about, the 4 freedoms, right? The freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. What is the 4th one?
Freedom from want.
Freedom from want. Just that one. The freedom from want. And those freedoms continue to be contested, right? But in the moment, we are living in a globalized world, right? Where hundreds and thousands, actually close to 30 million people are moving across borders or moving from one place to another, migrating because of climate change, because of war, because of lack of jobs, because of discrimination. And their movement, our movement, is shaping the politics of every place. And that's the case here too. In this country right now, and this is not news, immigration is a central kind of contested and difficult topic in our democracy and our politics. And we at CPD say we're fighting for our freedom to move in search of safety, in search of community, in search of family, in search of opportunity. We actually see the fight around Medicare for all as part of the freedom to move. Freedom to move from one job to another without losing our health care, from one state to another without losing our rights. But we also know that it is not enough to have the freedom of movement if we can't stay in the place we call home. If after the factory leaves, we have to leave our hometown. If after a hurricane destroys our island, like Puerto Rico, we have to leave our hometown. That we're fighting, that if our city is gentrifying and we are being pushed out, we need to fight for our freedom to stay in the place we call home. And we fundamentally are fighting for the freedom to thrive, just the ability to have the basic needs, our basic needs met so that we can work, so that we can have joy, so that we can have rest. So these are 3 freedoms that are constantly being fought for in our country, and our organization is constantly fighting for these 3 freedoms. In this moment in time when there's so much darkness, right? I don't need to kind of enumerate the many ways in which darkness is showing up in our politics. We know that 100 years of progress, of victories that have been hard to win, are being rolled back, whether it is the right to choose what women do with their own bodies, whether it is healthcare, whether it is Medicare, Social Security, kind of the safety guard that we have built through struggle is all under threat and all under attack. So what do we do when so much darkness is around us? It's a question that I think a lot of people have asked themselves in this moment, right? When we see children in cages and we despair and we see how is it possible that that's happening in this country? How can that be our country? What do we do? And I've asked myself, I've spent most of my life in the immigrant rights movement, so this moment is incredibly painful and incredibly difficult. And I've asked myself this question a lot. And I was reminded during the crisis of children at the border of a speech that someone called Valerie Kaur gave at the beginning of last year, soon after Trump's election. She is an activist, a civil rights activist, sick, of the Sikh faith. And she was telling the story of her grandfather, who migrated to the US in the early 1900s and was thrown in jail. I don't actually know why, but she was saying, I have to imagine that my grandfather in that jail had to reach into the essence of our faith, which talks about optimism, and cultivate in the darkness of that cell the idea that something else is possible. And allow the possibility, the optimist spirit, to come to the surface in the middle of that darkness. She was saying in this speech, I have a son. He is a brown boy in America. He will one day wear a turban if he chooses to practice the faith of our family. And he will probably be perceived as a terrorist by his peers, by his friends, in his own country. And he will feel unsafe. And he will be unsafe. So how can I, in this moment of so much darkness, imagine that something else is possible? And she said, I went back to the experience that brought this child into my life. What if this darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if we are living in a moment of great transition? What if America is a country that is yet to be born and that will be brought into existence by our love and our labor and the pain that we are feeling in this moment? And she says, what does the midwife say when you're giving birth? What does she say? Push. She does say that. Breathe. But she does say that, but she says, breathe. And then push. Because if we don't breathe, we die. If we don't push, we die. If we don't push, America dies. But if we push through this pain and this moment of tremendous darkness, we will be able to bring this new country into existence. And what we're doing today is breathing together so that we can step outside and push together. There is one human in my life who has decided to do a 6-long push, and that is my comrade here, Adi Barkan, who actually is using his life experience and the lessons from facing the end of life in a much closer timeline than we ever dared to imagine for ourselves and admit is possible for all of us. And use that realization and that fact as a clarifying moment. And say that when you have time that is so precious and so limited, you must use it in a way that allows you to live closer to your purpose ever so. And Adi has chosen to do that for the last 7 months with tremendous clarity, bringing so much purpose to the way he lives and allowing the people around him to be invited into that way of living. And that's why I'm so delighted that we are here together. And now I can pass the microphone to this beautiful human, Adi Barkan.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good mic. I can sit like 4 inches away and it still works. I usually have to eat the microphone. So let's do what Ana Maria suggested, and for one moment, just breathe together. and look around the room for a moment and see folks crowding in the corner and the kids sitting on the floor and people jamming in the hallway. And to me, that means there is standing room only in the fight for justice. So, what does it mean that each of you has chosen on this beautiful Friday afternoon to come into this sweltering room and jam yourself up against your neighbor's bodies and sit for 2 hours listening to people who are talking about our nation's dark hours? To me, what it means is that we all in this room share we all share the same hope. We share a hope that by coming together, by joining with one another, we can make something new happen. That being at home this afternoon, or going out for a walk in the beautiful Vermont summer will be less fulfilling, less empowering, less liberating than coming together in collective action and common purpose. And I, with Anna Maria and Jen and a dozen other comrades, have spent the past 6 weeks in rooms just like this in northern Nevada and rural Iowa and downtown Detroit and suburban Chicago and upstate New York, and in rooms like this with people like you, I've seen the same fear and distress and anger, and I've seen it repelled and defeated by the same hope and courage and energy that all of you are displaying now by coming here, and the same hope and energy that the Bennington chapter of Rights and Democracy showed all last year in the fight for health care and against the tax bill. And all over the country, people are ready to create something new. I am 34 years old, and 2 years ago I was living an incredibly lucky life with my wife Rachel and our beautiful newborn son Carl in a little slice of paradise in Santa Barbara, California. And then, like a lightning bolt from the sky, I was told that my brain is not working anymore, that the nerves, the neurons that connect my brain to my muscles are dying rapidly, and as a result, I can barely walk, and my speech has slowed and softened dramatically. And I'm dying before my own eyes. And I now depend on a tremendous amount of medical care and medical professionals who pour their heart and soul into caring for me and millions, tens of millions of others in this country who need health care. Most recently, I just came from an incredible physical therapy session just down the road. Doctors D'Arcangelo and Sullivan treated me like a prince. So let's give them a round of applause. My muscles and limbs are more relaxed and limber than they've been all week. But that's why we have a social safety net. I don't need to convince anyone in this room that access to health care is crucial, that our current system is insufficient and yet needs protecting, and that we should, quite frankly, be able to spend our time on things other than fighting for our basic human right to health care. I thought, as I assume some of you thought, that we had won this fight in 2009 and 10. We had elected a president who ran on the promise of universal health care. We had waged an enormous battle in Congress. We had a universal system, and we thought it would continue to get stronger and better. And yet now it's under fierce attack from Congress, from the executive, and the courts, and many of us are now saying that this proves the insufficiency of the ACA and demands from us a universal response that simplifies and makes more efficient our entire medical system, and perhaps the nation's premier champion of that more simple system is going to be here in a few minutes, and he'll probably have a bit more to say about the matter. But let's give it up for single-payer health care. two points to make about this. Number one, raise your hand if you can remember the healthcare platform that Al Gore ran on in 2000. Oh, more than I thought. Frankly, I can't remember. I think he was in favor of healthcare, but the main thing I remember him talking about was creating a lockbox for Social Security, whatever the hell that means. And in 2004, John Kerry proposed an expansion of healthcare, but it too was amorphous. And even in 2008, the furthest that Obama could go was a public option, and then he could not fight for it hard enough, and the Democrats, conservative Democrats like Joe Lieberman, killed it in Congress. So we need to appreciate the nurses and physicians and patients and politicians like Bernie who have done so much to radically shift the terms of the debate, and we know that in a year or two, all of the top-tier Democratic candidates for president, every single one will be championing single-payer health care. And that's a win. That's a huge win. The second observation is that we need to recreate that formula because healthcare is just the beginning. If we want a new social contract, if we believe that we should all have access to affordable housing, to a guaranteed good job, to free school from birth through university, if we believe that our budgets should focus on enhancing human welfare and dignity rather than locking people up and oppressing them and deporting them, if we believe in that broader vision, then we have to lay it out on the table like folks have been doing for decades with single payer, and then we have to fight like hell for it every year, every election, every town in America. And the lesson of the single-payer fight, which is obviously very, very far from won, but the lesson is that we can shift the terms of American political discourse radically, if we have the courage of our convictions and if we put forward a vision that centers our values rather than negotiating with ourselves from the get-go and trying to appeal to 50.1% of the population. You know, right now, most people don't know about what a federal job guarantee means or what it might look like. But if I tell you that the federal government should provide the funding to ensure that everyone who wants to work can work, and and those people can be put to work caring for children and the disabled, building schools and solar power, creating public artwork, and rejuvenating our electrical grid, and the energy of the American people can be matched with our immense wealth. That's a vision that will wake up the American imagination, will win elections from coast to coast, and will help us build the kind of country we can be proud of across a wide array of issues. That's the kind of big dreams and bold visions that I think we need to be putting forward, and then we need to be fighting for it. I've been traveling the country asking people to be heroes in this moment, to take responsibility for our democracy, because we know that it's not just a thing out there waiting for us to hand it down to our children. Democracy is a praxis. It's a struggle, and it has to be rebuilt and rejuvenated in every generation. And being a hero for your family and your community means putting yourself forward. It means having the conversations with people who are less politically involved and aware than you. It means making sure that they turn out to vote in this election as if it were a presidential year, because our democracy is under threat like we've never seen, at least in my lifetime. And everywhere I go, people are ready for that challenge, ready to put themselves out there and spend those precious resources, not just financial, but more importantly, the temporal resource that we all have in our limited days when we have to decide whether to go for a hike or go knocking on doors. And then when we do go for a hike, to make sure we're talking to all the other hikers about the election that's coming up in a few weeks. And the same at the supermarket and the gas station. I want to pull out my notes for just a moment. I think the challenge is always motivation. It's always about how to prioritize our time and how to feel like we're using our time effectively. So 2 examples. One, the story that Jen Flynn told you about how the people in this room played such an integral role in saving the ACA. Small numbers of people, 100 here, 75 there, week in, week out, having enormous outsized influence by disrupting Congress, inserting their bodies into the political debate. It really is true that small numbers of determined people can have tremendous outsized impact on our politics. And a second example, think back to the election of 2000. Think back to September and October. If you knew then what you know now, how would you have spent that fall? You would have dropped everything. You would have quit your job or left school and gone down to Florida and worked your ass off every day, right? And think back more recently to the election of 2016. How close we were to defeating Trump. How different the world would look today if he weren't in office. How different the Supreme Court would look. How different the global climate agreements and our economy would look. We have 2 elections coming up that are just as momentous. Donald Trump for 2 years has been raining down his hatred and his greed and his violence. And now he's seeking approval of that agenda from us. Our only chance at stopping him is in these 2 elections. If we elect a Republican House and Senate this year, he will get more vicious and more violent. But if we elect a Democratic House and you can do your part by driving over the border and volunteering, we can stop him. We can stop his agenda and we can begin impeachment proceedings in January. And then, over the coming 2 years, in states like Vermont and New York and California, we can put forward an alternative vision for the country. A vision that the Democrats can run on in 2020, and within 27 months from now, we can have elected the most progressive president in 80 years. We can have our Congress led not by the agenda of Paul Ryan, but one motivated by people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We can live in a radically different world. But in order to do that, we have to work our asses off every week. It can't be a once in a while thing. We have to organize our friends and our family and our neighbors and our classmates and make sure that everybody treats these elections with the gravity that they deserve. I have been so inspired by the work of your Senator Bernie Sanders, not because he is a power broker in the Democratic Party, not because of his money or his charisma, but because he knows who he works for. He knows that his job is to be your voice, unafraid, unbossed. He will speak truth regardless of who it offends, and he will fight for our interests, not the interests of the money class. And in doing so, he will lay out a vision for a different world, one that we can be proud of and one that we can drive towards. A vision that can bring people like you into rooms like this and give us the hope that we need to sustain ourselves in dark times, the hope that we need in order to get out of bed and fight, the hope that we need to believe that this is the darkness of the womb, not the tomb. It is my great honor to introduce your senator and a hero of mine, Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming out to this cool, delightful room. Let me begin by thanking the Center for Popular Democracy, Rights and Democracy, who have done just a great job all over our state, New Hampshire and elsewhere, organizing people, Sarah Laundeville, and the Vermont Coalition for Disability Rights. But mostly, I want to thank Addie Barkin, who is a true American hero. Where is Addie? Because Addie is doing as much as anybody in this country to make the case that the time is long overdue for the United States of America to join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a right, not a privilege. I'm gonna talk about health care in a minute, but as Addie reminded you, and all of you know, we can't just isolate healthcare as one issue and ignore all of the other issues that are out there. And one of the things that I have been doing for the last several years with a number of other folks all over this country is help move this country forward in what we call the political revolution. And that means not only winning elections, and we're winning elections all over this country, but it means transforming American society economically and politically to make this country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, the country that we know we can become. And when we do that, we're focusing on two fundamental approaches. Number one is fighting for a progressive agenda that speaks to the needs of working families all across this country. What I believe, and what I know you believe, is there is something fundamentally wrong when we have more income and wealth inequality than any other country on earth, and that it is worse now than any time since the 1920s. It is not acceptable to me, and I think to you, that we have three people in this country, three people who now own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Three people. It is not acceptable that we have one guy, wealthiest guy in the world, whose wealth is increasing by $275 million every single day, But Jeff Bezos of Amazon pays his workers wages that are so low that many of them are forced to go on food stamps and Medicaid that you are paying for. We do not need to subsidize Jeff Bezos or Walton family or other billionaire heads of corporations. They got to be paying their workers a living wage. So when we talk about creating the nation we want to become, we understand that anybody in this country who works 40 hours a week should not be living in poverty. That means raising the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And when we talk about wages, we're also talking about ending the absurdity of women making 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. Women deserve 100 cents on that dollar. And when we talk about creating the society we want to become, we know that our young people, regardless of income, have got to be able to get the education that they need. And that it is totally absurd that we got hundreds of thousands of bright young people, kids here in Bennington, Burlington, all over this country, who want to go to college, who want to get the technical skills they need for the jobs that are out there, but they cannot do that because their families lack the income. And all over this country, ideas that used to be thought of as very, very radical ideas, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, or making public colleges and universities tuition free, are now ideas whose time is coming. And when we talk about the important ideas that are out there, there is nothing maybe more important than the issue of health care. And what I want to say about this is that we have incredible momentum behind us right now. And my main point that I want to make to you on all of the issues that we are talking about in the progressive agenda, more and more people are coming over to our side. Notwithstanding the guy in the White House, we are winning the ideological struggle to create a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Now, Trump and his friends fought very hard for their idea of tax reform, which meant massive tax breaks for the richest people in this country and the largest corporations. In fact, 83% of the benefits over a 10-year period go to the top 1%. We have massive income and wealth inequality, and Trump and his friends gave massive tax breaks to those who don't need it. Well, our message to them is that when we talk about tax reform, it's not tax breaks for billionaires. It is the demand that these guys start paying their fair share of taxes. Now, let me say a word about why we're here today, and that is health care. And it seems to me when we talk about health care, we can look at the issue in maybe two separate ways. First of all is the issue of morality. And that is, as a people, as a nation, we have got to ask ourselves a very simple question. And that is whether you are poor or whether you're rich, whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you're black, whether you're white, no matter who you may be. We all know that we're going to get sick, we can have accidents, we're going to have babies, we're going to be on our deathbed. The question, the very simple question is health care a human right or is it not? And what we say loudly and clearly is health care for all is a human right. That is the moral position. But this is not just a moral issue. In many ways, it is an economic issue for the country. So let's take a look at the economics of the current healthcare system. And a lot of people don't know this. And that is that today in America, despite the fact that we have 30 million Americans with no health insurance, you have even more than that, including people in this room who are underinsured with high deductibles and high copayments, such that when they get sick, even though they have insurance, they can't go to the doctor. I've talked to doctors all over this country, and they tell me people walk in the door very, very sick. And the doctor says, why didn't you come in earlier? The person says, well, I had a deductible. I could not afford that deductible. I couldn't afford that copayment. And the truth is, thousands of people, you're not going to read this in the papers too much, thousands of people die every single year in this country because by the time they walk into the doctor's office, it is too late. I don't think it is a radical idea to say that if in this country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, if you get sick, you should be able to go to the doctor's office when you need to go to the doctor's office. Now, the questions that we have got to ask ourselves in terms of the economics of healthcare is a very simple question. Why is it that in the United States of America, we spend twice as much per capita as do the people of virtually every other major country on earth? Right now in the United States, we spend over $10,000 per person for healthcare. Canadians spend less than $5,000. The British spend $4,200. The French spend $4,900. We are spending twice as much per person, and yet despite that, despite all the people who are uninsured and underinsured, our health care outcomes are not particularly good. Guess what? Despite spending all of that money, our life expectancy is lower than most other industrialized countries. Despite spending all of that money, our infant mortality rate is higher than virtually any other major country on earth. And then you add to that the insanity, and this is what you define dysfunctionality is. Today, 1 out of 5 Americans who get a prescription written by a doctor cannot afford to fill that prescription because the drug companies are charging us by far the highest prices in the world for the medicine that we need. Now, how crazy is it to have a system where you get sick, you go to the doctor writes a script, and you can't afford to fill it? What happens to you? You get even sicker. What happens to you if you are sick and you can't go to the doctor when you should? You're going to end up in the emergency room, which is the most expensive form of health care in this country. A rational health care system is a health care system that A, tries to keep people well, and B, in a cost-effective way, make sure that we get the best care possible when we get sick. But we don't have that system because our system is not geared to providing quality health care to all in a cost-effective way. System we have is designed to make as much money as possible for the insurance companies and the drug companies and the CEOs who run those corporations. Now, last year alone, United Health Group made over $10 billion in profit. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield made over almost $4 billion in profit. The CEOs of the insurance companies, guy who runs Regeneron, received $95 million in compensation. CEO of United Health Group received $88 million, $83 million in compensation, et cetera, et cetera. So what we have got to be thinking of is that we need a health system which makes huge profits for these corporations, makes huge profits for Wall Street, gives huge compensation packages to the guys who run these companies, or do we want a cost-effective health care system that provides health care to every man, woman, and child in this country? And what the American people are saying, this gives me a great deal of pleasure. Let me tell you, just a few years ago, some of you may know, when we talked about Medicare for all, people said, oh, Bernie, you're an extremist. You're a radical idea. You come from this crazy state of Vermont. Maybe it works in Vermont, but nobody in America believes in that. Well, last poll that I saw, consistent, by the way, with other polls, 63% of the American people now support a Medicare for all single-payer program. Now, you and I know that, in truth, the debate here is not over health care. It's over greed, it's over profits, it's over huge compensation packages. And these guys are not going to give up without a fight. Just the other day, literally a few days ago, it was reported that a new organization is coming together from the drug companies and the insurance companies and all those people who profit off the healthcare system. And they're going to spend zillions of dollars, no doubt, trying to convince the American people that Medicare for all is a bad idea, because they are much more interested in maintaining their profits and their fat paychecks than they are about worrying about the needs of the American people. But the good news is that what we are seeing is massive support for the idea of Medicare for all, for obvious reasons. For people who are 65 or older, Medicare works pretty good. I think it has to be improved. I think we have to cover eye issues, optical issues. I think we have to cover hearing issues. I think we got to cover dental issues. All right? But by and large, of all of the healthcare systems that are out there right now, Medicare is the most popular. And by the way, you know what the second most popular is? It's the Veterans Administration. The VA healthcare system is widely supported by veterans in this country. So we have...
But it might get privatized.
It might, not all, but I will take place off of my dead body. We're working on that issue. All right? So what you are going to be seeing in the coming weeks and months in response to the massive support that Medicare for All is getting is all kinds of money being spent against us. The drug companies have unlimited sums of money. Just tell you one story. I was out in California a couple of years ago. People out in California were working on a program to lower prescription drug costs, and I went out there to help them. The pharmaceutical industry in one state spent $130 million to defeat that proposal. One state, $130 million. They have unlimited sums of money, and they lie all of the time. All right? So what we need to do, and I know Rights and Democracy is on board, and by the way, congratulations to you in Bennington. I'm told you are one of the most active Rights and Democracy chapters in the country. Thank you. So what we have got to do is continue the fight. The people of Vermont are with us. People of this country are with us. We're going to take on the most powerful special interest and greedy forces in this country, but we will defeat them. Never forget, Social Security in the 1930s did not come without a massive struggle. All right? Medicare and Medicaid in the 1960s did not come without a struggle. The trade union movement in this country was not developed without struggle. Civil rights movement did not take place without enormous struggle. The gay rights movement, the environmental movement, the women's movement. Nothing that is real and important comes easy. Frederick Douglass talked about it. Okay? If you want freedom, they're not going to give it to you. You've got to struggle and fight for it. And right now, some of the most powerful and greedy special interests in this country want to maintain a dysfunctional healthcare system. But we are going to beat them. And our job is to stand together, not let Trump and his friends divide us up by the color of our skin, or where we were born or our sexual orientation or whatever. When we stand together and keep our eyes focused on what is important to the American people, health care for all, a livable minimum wage, affordable housing, demanding that the wealthy start paying their fair share of taxes, real comprehensive immigration reform, criminal justice reform. This is not what I want. This is what the American people want in poll after poll after poll. (2018) in a few months is the most important special election, most important midterm election in the modern history of this country. And we need to organize effectively here in Vermont, and I'm busy running all over the country doing my best to make sure that we elect progressives who will stand up to this disastrous and reactionary Trump agenda. So here we are. We got 3 months or so left to go in the campaign. Let us stand together. Let us keep our eyes on the important issues that impact working people. And if we do that, I am very optimistic about the future of this country. Thank you all very much.
Oh, sure. All right. Hello, everybody. Would you please clear the doorway so that Adi can leave out? And then I want to thank everybody for coming. And who here wants to be a hero? Yeah. No, wait. I didn't hear. I only heard a few people. Who wants to be a hero? Yes. And are you going to go vote? Yes. And are you going to support health care and the ADA? Okay. We're all fighting together, and that's the only way we can do it, because together we win. Thanks, everybody, for coming.